Ever feel like you're swimming upstream? Like having ideas that are just a little too different.
Yeah.
Well, today we are going to do a deep dive into Adam Grant's originals
Okay.
to explore why those, like, weird ideas
Yeah.
might actually be your ticket to changing the world.
Interesting.
Get ready to unpack some serious insights on recognizing, nurturing, and unleashing your own originality.
It's funny because, we celebrate innovators,
Right.
but those innovations often come with a cost, right? Like the invention of the automobile revolutionized transportation,
Yeah.
but it also disrupted existing industries.
Oh, for sure.
That makes you wonder how we find that balance between progress and disruption.
Yeah.
How can we manage those risks that come with being an original?
That's a really good point. I mean, I've definitely had those light bulb moments where I thought I had a brilliant idea only to be met with, skepticism or even resistance.
Yeah.
And it makes you question your own judgment.
Absolutely.
Grant actually kicks off Chapter 1, Destructive Creation, with this quote by George Bernard Shaw.
Oh, okay.
The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man.
So are we saying that being an original means being unreasonable?
Well, not exactly unreasonable in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
It's more about having the courage to challenge the status quo,
Right.
to see things differently, and to push for change even when it's disruptive. It's about embracing that creative destruction, knowing that real progress often comes from, like, shaking things up a bit.
Okay, so it's about being bold and disruptive, but also being smart about it.
Right.
And speaking of being smart,
Sure.
in Chapter 2, The Blind Inventor and the One-Eyed Investor really dives into the challenges of evaluating original ideas. And it starts with this quote by Scott Adams: "Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep."
I think this is so important because we often get caught up in this need for perfection,
Right.
and that can stifle originality.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's so true. Think about the invention of the Post-it note. That slightly sticky adhesive was initially considered a failure, right? It took someone with a fresh perspective to see its potential and turn it into what it is today.
Right.
What's fascinating to me is how often even the experts miss the mark.
Yeah.
We get stuck in our ways and our familiar frameworks.
Sure.
And anything outside of that feels
Right.
threatening or just plain wrong.
Right.
It's like we're blind to the possibilities.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And it makes me think about all those incredible ideas that have been rejected or dismissed simply because they were too different,
Yeah.
too unconventional.
Yeah.
So how can we, as individuals, avoid becoming those blind inventors or one-eyed investors?
I think a big part of it is recognizing our own biases.
Yeah.
We all have them, and they can really cloud our judgment, especially when it comes to evaluating something that's truly original.
Right.
Grant highlights the importance of seeking out diverse perspectives, of getting feedback from people who don't think like you, who come from different backgrounds or have different experiences.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you might be too close to your own work to see its flaws or even its true potential.
So it's about surrounding yourself with people who can challenge your assumptions,
Right.
who can help you refine your ideas, and who can provide that crucial outside perspective.
Absolutely.
I think that's something a lot of us struggle with, especially if we're used to working independently.
Sure.
We need to create those spaces where we can get honest, constructive feedback.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to Chapter 3, Taking Risks with Different Opinions.
Okay.
I love how this chapter starts with a quote from Einstein. Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. It makes you realize that being original often means going against the grain, and that can be incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that kind of resistance in your own work?
Absolutely. Putting yourself out there,
Yeah.
championing an idea that challenges the status quo, it takes courage.
Right.
But it's also crucial to remember that having strong convictions doesn't mean dismissing other viewpoints.
Right. So how do you find that balance? How do you stay true to your vision while also being open to feedback and potentially even criticism?
Well, I think it's about understanding that feedback, even criticism, can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
It's not about winning an argument.
Right.
It's about refining your idea, making it stronger, and finding ways to effectively communicate its value to others. Originals are passionate, yes, but they're also open to learning and growing.
Right.
They're willing to consider different perspectives and to find common ground, even with those who might initially disagree with them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's about building bridges, not burning them. And that brings us to another crucial element of being an original, building coalitions.
Exactly. You need to find your allies. Those individuals who share your values,
Yeah.
who can champion your cause, and who can help you amplify your impact.
Right.
They can be within your organization from different fields or even from those who initially opposed you.
Oh, interesting.
And sometimes finding those allies means being strategic about how you present your ideas,
No.
how you package them in a way that resonates with different audiences.
That reminds me of chapter 4.
Okay.
If it's fast, it's not safe.
Right.
We live in a world where we're constantly told to, like, move fast and break things.
Right.
But Grant challenges that assumption,
Yeah.
arguing that sometimes the best approach is to wait for the right moment.
Interesting.
He even throws in this classic Mark Twain quote,
Oh, okay.
"Never put off till tomorrow what may be done the day after tomorrow just as well."
Wow.
It's like he's giving us permission to
Yeah.
procrastinate.
Well, not exactly procrastinate in the traditional sense.
Right.
It's more about what Grant calls strategic procrastination.
Okay.
You know, his research shows that waiting for the right moment can actually be a huge advantage for originals. Sometimes you need that extra time to refine your idea, gather more data, or just wait for a more receptive environment.
Yeah.
Rushing into things can lead to, like, costly mistakes or missed opportunities.
So how do you know when it's the right time to act?
Right.
How do you distinguish between, like, strategic procrastination and just plain laziness?
That's a great question. And I think it comes down to being intentional and mindful.
Okay.
Strategic procrastination isn't about avoiding work.
Yeah.
It's about choosing your battles wisely
Right.
and maximizing your chances of success.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that sometimes the best action is
Fun.
thoughtful inaction.
Okay, so it's about being strategic and deliberate in our timing. Now, chapter 5, Goldilocks and the Trojan Horse, really dives into the art of persuasion.
Oh, okay.
Grant kicks things off with a snippet from Dr. Seuss's poem
Oh, wow.
about the starbelly sneetches.
Yeah.
You know, those adorable creatures,
Yeah.
obsessed with having stars on their bellies.
Oh, yeah.
What a clever way to introduce the theme of group dynamics and how you try to fit in or stand out.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it ties in perfectly with how originals navigate those social dynamics to gain acceptance for their ideas. Grant introduces the Goldilocks principle, which suggests that the most successful original ideas are those that are novel,
Okay.
but not too radical.
Yeah.
They hit that sweet spot between familiarity and novelty, piquing people's interest without completely alienating them.
So it's about finding that perfect balance.
Right.
You want to push boundaries, but not to the point where people completely tune you out.
Yeah.
How can we, as originals, find that sweet spot?
One strategy Grant highlights is the Trojan horse approach. It's about packaging radical ideas in familiar ways, making them more palatable to those who might be resistant to change.
Okay.
For example, think about the early days of online education.
Okay.
It was a radical concept learning without being physically present in a classroom. But to gain acceptance, early pioneers framed it as an extension of existing distance learning programs.
Okay.
They used familiar language and structures to introduce a revolutionary idea,
Right.
and it worked.
That's such a great example.
Yeah.
It shows how being original isn't just about having groundbreaking ideas.
Right.
It's also about being savvy and strategic in how you present those ideas.
Yeah.
Now, the final chapter we're diving into today is
Okay.
Rebel with a Cause.
Yeah.
I was particularly struck by this quote from Harry and Bonaro Overstreet.
Okay.
We are not merely the sum of the events that happen to us. We are more the product of our reaction to them.
It got me thinking about how our personal experiences
Especially those early, like, formative years
Yeah.
shape our capacity for originality.
Absolutely. This chapter really digs into how family dynamics, early experiences, and cultural influences can either foster or stifle original thinking.
Right.
It also highlights the incredible impact of mentors and role models in supporting and encouraging originality.
You know, it makes me wonder
Yeah.
if there's a certain type of personality that's more prone to originality. Are we born with it,
Right.
or is it something that we can cultivate?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
While some people might have a natural inclination towards nonconformity. I believe originality is a muscle that can be strengthened with practice.
Okay.
It's about challenging our assumptions,
Right.
embracing our unique perspectives, and surrounding ourselves with people who encourage us to think differently.
I love that analogy of originality being a muscle.
Yeah.
It implies that it takes effort,
Right.
but it also suggests that it's something that we can develop and strengthen over time.
Absolutely.
And I think that's an empowering message for our listeners.
For sure.
You don't have to be born a certain way to be an original.
Right.
You can choose to cultivate that mindset and those habits.
Exactly. It's about being curious, being open to new experiences, and not being afraid to question the status quo.
Right.
And it's never too late to start.
So what does this all mean for our listener?
You're right.
What are some key takeaways they can apply to their own lives?
First and foremost, I hope they recognize that their unique perspective is valuable. Don't be afraid to embrace those quirks, those unconventional thoughts and ideas.
And remember, you don't have to have it all figured out from the start.
Right.
It's okay to make mistakes, to experiment and to iterate.
Yeah.
Find your allies, build your coalitions, and be strategic about how you present your ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
And perhaps most importantly, cultivate that inner rebel.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo, to speak up for what you believe in, and to fight for the change you want to see in the world. Because, let's face it, the world needs more originals.
For sure.
It needs people who aren't afraid to think differently,
Right.
to challenge conventions, and to push the boundaries of what's possible.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's those original thinkers, those who dare to be different, who ultimately drive progress and make the world a more interesting and innovative place.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into originals,
Okay.
I want to leave our listener with a challenge.
Okay, cool.
Think about one area in your life, work, relationships, your community, where you've been playing it safe, maybe conforming a bit too much.
Right.
And once you've identified that area, I challenge you to brainstorm one small original idea.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be earth-shattering
Right.
that you could test in that space.
That makes sense.
It could be a new way of approaching a problem at work,
Mm-hmm.
a unique way to connect with someone you care about, or even just a small act of kindness that brightens someone's day.
That's nice.
The point is to push yourself outside of your comfort zone,
Right.
to flex that originality muscle and see what happens. Because you never know. That small act of originality could have a ripple effect, inspiring others to embrace their own unique perspectives and to make a difference in their own way.
Absolutely.
It's like Grant says in the book, the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it.
I love that quote.
So don't settle for a life of conformity.
Right.
Embrace your inner original. Nurture those unconventional ideas, and let's make the world a more interesting, innovative, and just plain awesome place.
I love it.
And that concludes our deep dive into originals.
Awesome.
We hope this episode has inspired you to unleash your own original thinking and to make a meaningful contribution to the world around you.
Great.
Until next time, keep diving deep and embrace those weird, wonderful ideas. So as we wrap up our deep dive into originals, I want to leave our listener with a challenge.
Okay.
Think about one area in your life, like work, relationships, your community,
Right.
where you've been playing it safe, maybe conforming a bit too much.
Yeah.
And once you've identified that area,
Okay.
I challenge you to brainstorm one small
Yeah.
original idea.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be like earth-shattering
Right.
that you could test in that space.
Cool.
It could be a new way of approaching a problem at work,
Uh-huh.
a unique way to connect with someone you care about,
Yeah.
or even just a small act of kindness that brightens someone's day.
I like that.
The point is to push yourself outside of your comfort zone, to flex that originality muscle
All right.
and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because you never know, that small act of originality could have a ripple effect, inspiring others to embrace their own unique perspectives and to make a difference in their own way.
That's a great point.
It's like Grant says in the book, the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it is too low and we reach it.
Oh, I love that quote.
So don't settle for a life of conformity.
Yeah.
Embrace your inner original. Nurture those unconventional ideas. And let's make the world a more interesting, innovative, and just plain awesome place.
I love it.
And that concludes our deep dive into originals.
Awesome.
We hope this episode has inspired you to unleash your own original thinking and to make a meaningful contribution to the world around you.
It has.
Until next time, Keep diving deep and embrace those weird, wonderful ideas.
Absolutely.